Welcome to the Esports Performance Summit. My name is Brian Bain, and today we're with Drew Schwartz. Drew, welcome to the summit.
How you guys doing?
Well, Drew, I think getting kicked off, it'd be helpful to, if we get a little bit of background on you. You're obviously a chiropractor, or at least I know that, maybe not obvious to our audience yet, but you're a chiropractor and an avid gamer. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of jump into some prevention and treatment techniques that you have?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. My name is Dr. Drew Schwartz. I have a practice here in Cleveland, but I also run a blog called For the Wellness Blog, and I've been doing that for about a year and some change. I grew up in Minnesota playing video games there. Started with Super Nintendo and then Nintendo 64. Went to undergrad at a private school up there called Concordia College, and then I went to chiropractic school in St. Louis at Logan College of Chiropractic. Graduated from that and came to Cleveland for work, and I've been here ever since 2012. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. But I think the big thing is I started my wellness blog April 2018, and I've been just having a blast because I wanted to combine the chiropractic aspect, the treatment, but I also wanted to include something I love doing, which is video games, esports, and combining those two passions. It was really fun and really well received outlet for me to have a space for esports athletes, gamers, and even any desk workers to have a resource to say, my wrist is hurting. What do I do? I'm thinking about getting a chair. Where do I start? And I think having all that in one space is really good for the community, but general public as well.
I'm curious what made you start your blog when you did, and you've been a chiropractor for a number of years and a gamer long before that. I'm curious why around a year or so ago, what happened then that made you want to go and start officially focusing on the esports community?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I have a 2-hour lunch, which is awesome, right? So I think I was like, I want to do something really productive for that. You can binge watch Netflix all you want, but I think learning more and increasing my knowledge of treatment, wellness was a big aspect, but I think the 2-hour lunch was pretty big too, as far as just having time to do that. And I wanted to learn how to, develop a website and do some blogging stuff and kind of write down my ideas. And so I think that's what kind of triggered it. And it was a slow process, just getting traction. As anyone knows in this space, I feel like, it takes a long time, but, once you get the ball rolling, it feels really good when you're helping people out that you would never have contact with, and helping teams in the area that I have recently. It's just been a blast, honestly.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's it. Maybe you can mix some passions with your profession. That's a really great place to be. Let's go ahead and dive into the interview. And I think, as we discussed before the interview, probably have two major parts. One, focusing on some prevention techniques, ergonomics. You already mentioned, how do you go about starting even by a chair, for example? Like I said, it's been a big question for a lot of people. And then we can dive into some various treatment practices that you like to utilize with your clients. Yeah. So let's start with prevention, and actually just chair. What would you say is probably one of the most important, we may have already answered this question, components of prevention health for a gamer in terms of their gaming setup and all that kind of stuff? Is it the chair?
Yeah, I think chair is a big thing, and I think the adjustability of the chair is huge too. I hate seeing people in like those executive chairs that are just leather and the rounded armrest. Like, you need to have adjustability because it has to fit you. Everyone's completely different. I'm a taller guy, so I always struggle with chairs that can go high enough to have my legs underneath me properly. But adjustability in the backrest, adjustability in the armrest, I think are the two biggest aspects. Just because, then you can move it up to the desk height and have your arm supported by the desk. But if you have, like a kitchen table chair or one of those executive chairs that won't go underneath that desk, it's going to be, you might not feel it today, but down the road a couple of years, you're going to feel it as you get older and as you play more. So I think the desk is the biggest part, honestly, and education, because you can have the sweetest chair you want, but if you don't know how to use it, you're just kind of screwed. Because I have a lot of patients that come in, they'll say, I got a standing desk. My back still hurts because I'm standing 8 hours a day. I said, well, that's not what you want to do. Did they teach you in education when you got it? They said, no. They basically threw me a desk and said, here, figure it out. And I think the education aspect is number one. Chairs do.
So tell me about this with the chair, and we'll come back to education in a minute.
Yeah.
You said it may not, if you're in like a kind of traditional executive chair or like a kitchen table chair, for example, you may not notice it now, but down the road you will. How will that impact you? Because one of the things right now, people think, well, I'm fine now, so I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
But down the road, you'll regret that. So I'm curious, what is that? What are the pain points that come up from having a bad chair like that?
So it's kind of dependent on what you play, right? So I think console and PC are obviously the two biggest, and those differ in the way you sit. If you're a console player, you bend forward, horrible position, kind of leaning, elbows on your knees. So you're going to get a lot of back pain. You're going to get a lot of neck pain because your neck's kind of tilted up while you're looking at the TV as well. And then for PC players, I think, just having a good support for the longer periods of time, because you're not moving positions as much. It's more hand and wrist issues, a little bit of neck as well, that I've noticed in computer. But I think, it depends on what you do. But just getting a proper chair that can extend back a little bit is going to be huge. And I think that's my biggest thing, is making sure the chair can not be at 90, because I think everybody is always like, oh, I sit straight up, I don't know what's going on. But you don't want to sit straight up. One, and two, you want to actually have that backrest supporting your back, because you've probably seen pictures as well as people sitting straight up like this off the backrest, and they're like, look how good my posture is. Well, that lasts 10 seconds, right? And then you slowly start slouching down. So I think you have to utilize the backrest. That's why it's called that, right? And so I think doing that and extending it back is your biggest thing.
Extending the back? What do you mean by that?
So like if it's at 90, you don't want it. I don't like it at 90. I like it just a little bit past 90. So like between 110 and 90.
So leaning back a little further than 90.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. So if this is 90, this is what, 135, halfway in between. You can kind of eyeball it and just go a little bit less, and then it takes a lot of pressure off those discs, takes a lot of pressure off those facets or those kind of joints in the back, and you're able to kind of last longer and have the endurance for those muscles without them sitting straight up and just pretending you have good posture for a pitcher.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things is in this, now we're officially into the education piece as far as like how do you actually sit in your chair right, because there's an insane number of chair options, and like adjustability makes sense, and that way you can tailor it to yourself a little bit. Like one of the things that I've heard is it's not so much the chair itself, but again how you use it. But also just stand up once an hour. You know what I mean? Like that's. I think a lot of people have Fitbits that'll kind of like, buzz you or whatever once an hour and say, "Hey, get up." And I've heard that alone can be one of the make a huge difference in terms of preventing back issues. And I'd love for you to speak into all that.
Yeah, I have an Apple Watch, and I had the standing reminders, and I feel terrible saying this, but I turned them off. But
because it's annoying. So you don't want to get up.
Yeah.
It never buzzes you at a right time, right?
Yeah. So I think using apps is great. Taking breaks every half hour, 45 minutes, depending on the game type. Like in between games, like if you have a short game, you die right away, right? Get up, move around. You're not doing anything anyways. And so moving up, breaking that kind of muscle pattern of you sitting forward or sitting in a not so good position for a long period of time, break up that muscle pattern. Take a break, walk around, run up steps, grab something, water, something to eat, something like that. I mean, that's you just kind of resetting that muscle pattern in there.
And how long of a break is helpful there? I mean, you're talking like get up and walk around for 3 minutes, or does it need to be longer than that?
Yeah, I think, you can kind of do whatever you want. Just literally getting up, walking around for 20, 30 seconds, doing some quick exercises and sitting back down. I mean, I find that's enough for me as far as just, like I said, kind of getting that muscle pattern broken up from just being in 30 minutes, because time flies when you're playing video games. So, 30 minutes will go by and you'll be like, geez, I'm so sore. I don't know why. But if you were sitting for 30 minutes, time would go by much slower and you would notice that pain a lot more and get up. But when you're in that game, you're just focused, right? And so you got to make sure that you're breaking up that muscle pattern in there.
What about your feet? I think about that too, because people always talk about making the level your monitor should be at, and how your mouse, or depending on what kind of game you're playing, like what kind of mouse you should be using, or how the keyboard should be tilted and slanted and all that kind of thing. But when I'm sitting up, my feet are moving around. Sometimes I put my feet up on a leg rest, or I'll stretch them out and stuff. How much of a factor is that?
Yeah, I have the bad habit too of like kind of crossing my legs a little bit, and so I always tell people, set them flat as much as you can. It's really hard to break up your habits of I'm crossing them. Just whenever you can notice it, try and keep them flat. I think is the biggest thing, and make sure they kind of form 90-degree angles, right, and come down. So um, it's just really hard to break up those habits. So if you can, just keep them flat, and if you have to move them around and move them or switch them around or use a footrest, that's really good too. Have you ever used a footrest at all?
Not much, but I mean, whenever I have, I like it.
Yeah, and so I always recommend getting a footrest, and try and keep them as flat as on the ground if you can, if you're not using the footrest.
So footrest is actually better than even flat on the ground.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some of them have like a little round on them, so you can move them up and down and move your feet around a little bit and keep everything moving. And I'm a big proponent of always be moving. Right? If it's sit to stand, you're standing. If you're sitting, you're moving your feet a little bit. I mean, I'm not proposing rocking in your chair like this or anything like that, but just if you keep moving, your body's going to be happy, right? And if your body's happy, then you feel better.
So even like just fidgeting around in your chair can be a beneficial thing.
Yeah, between games or something, just kind of stretch. You can do some extension, some chest openers, and get some extension in that back that's probably been sitting flexed all day. Yeah, keep moving, because I hate the saying that sitting is the new smoking. I think that's been traveling around the internet and is really buzzworthy, and everyone's just like, oh my gosh, I should never sit again. But as I said before, and when I've had patients that stand all day, well, that's not better for you either, right? And I always tell people, I think sitting is not the new smoking, but I think being sedentary and not moving is, right? Because it can increase cardiovascular disease, colorectal disease, and it can, you just feel kind of down and kind of lethargic when you're sitting all day. So moving around, getting that blood flowing, breaking up kind of those muscle patterns and just moving, you feel a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, no, I can speak for that. So again, still focusing on the chair, like how do you know like what kind of back support is good? Like we talked about, you need to lean back about 110 degrees or so more than 90, so you're not straight up and down.
Yeah, just a touch.
Like what, like as far as like the lower back support, like how do you know if it's good or not in your chair, or if you need to add something to it?
So a lot of the gaming chairs like mine, if you have a DX Racer, they come with a little lumbar support. Most of the time it's good. In my case, this DX Racer chair, it's too wide for me, right? So it puts, instead of putting that nice curve in my back, right, coming through here, it really makes my back really sore. So I will take it out. I'll put like a little towel or something in between there, something a little smaller, and that helps me. But a lot of them come with lumbar support, and then they're easy to take off, and it's just like a flat back, and that's okay too. Just as long as you put something kind of in between there, like you can roll up a little towel or something in the small of your back, just to get that nice curve in there, because that's the way the spine wants to load via the joints and the anatomy. So if you can get a little curve in there, it's going to make a big difference rather than just a flat back.
So if you said, I mean, as far as how much of a curve, basically you want a comfortable curve, you want to be able to lean back in the chair and feel a comfortable curve in the lower part of your back. Is that fair?
Yeah, because like we said before, we want to utilize that backrest. There's a reason that backrest is there, right? So you want to utilize the backrest and have that little curve, but it's got to fit you, right? So you need to try it out. So try out your lumbar support that came with your chair. If it doesn't work, then try a little towel and kind of vary sizes and see what works best for you. Because like I said, everyone's anatomy is completely different. And for you to, for chair manufacturers, just kind of do like a catch-all and say, this will work for a majority of the people, but everyone's different.
Right.
So you need to try it yourself, because that's the only way it's going to be tailored to you.
Anything else chair related that you'd like to discuss as far as either type of chair, how to fix your chair, how to sit in your chair?
Do not use executive chairs. I hate those things. And
just to be clear, when you say executive chair, how is that different from a typical adjustable chair?
So
I lump it all into just office chair, and it's not like there's a distinction.
So like with most gaming chairs, I want something has a firm composition, gives you some support, is breathable material, and highly adjustable. And with those executive chairs, like you've probably noticed, they're big and bulky and leather that doesn't breathe and really cushy. Like you almost sink down into them sometimes. So I kind of distinguish those from the gaming chairs because I switched my gaming chair from my house to my office because I sit in it more and it's more comfortable for me to sit in than an executive chair. So yeah, don't get an executive chair is the reason for this. Yeah.
And what's the name of the chair you have?
It's a DX Racer. I really like Secret Labs. Makes a really good product. And then what's it? Raynor.
Secret Labs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Raynor, Raynor Gaming. They make a decent one as well.
Great.
And they usually range from like 200 to 400. But this is investment. If you're a streamer, if you're a competitive gamer, invest in a solid chair, and you'll be able to play longer, stream longer, get better. It's just kind of like investing in a bed, right? You're investing in your health, something you're on all the time, so you invest in it.
Well, $200 to $400, that is a lot of money, but that's also kind of what chairs cost too. If you go out and try to buy a decent chair somewhere, as annoying as it is, they're going to cost probably around that range, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, that's helpful because I really appreciate, we haven't really, with any other guests yet, dove into the chair itself and different dynamics. This is really helpful. But you also mentioned, you'd love to talk about treatment as well. This is all, so far we've been all prevention, but treatment of various injuries and problems. So can you talk about maybe some of the issues and problems you see most maybe, and kind of how you like to work with those patients?
Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing is the ergonomics. Like, is a big aspect because you can work on someone all you want, but if they go back to that just terrible setup and terrible kind of education about it, it's going to revert back. The muscles are going to revert right back. The posture is going to revert right back to it. So the big thing first is getting the ergonomics education and knowing kind of what a decent setup is. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be, or you shouldn't be feeling pain. So for the treatment stuff, I work with a couple teams, and I think the big thing for me is the manual therapy and kind of the muscle stripping or kind of the muscle work in there. So you get gamers that have like chronic wrist and hand issues, low back issues, trigger points, old injuries from scar tissue, the repetitive stress syndrome with nerve entrapment, stuff like that. And if you're not doing that, you're kind of doing a disservice to them because that manual therapy and that soft tissue needs to get worked on. And if, like I said, you're not doing that, then they could be getting better a lot faster if you're able to do that manual therapy. And the chiropractic aspect, as everyone knows, is the pops and stuff that everyone sees on YouTube. It's crazy most of the times. The one with the most views are always the ones that are crazy, but getting mobilization of those joints, they feel so much better. So yeah.
So let's talk through that a little bit. You mentioned this idea of manual therapy for people who have chronic wrist and hand issues, repetitive nerve syndrome. Can you talk about what you mean by manual therapy? Like what is that? Is that something that people can do a little bit on their own? Do they have to visit a chiropractor for all of that?
So it's similar to like a massage, but it's more specific. It's more triggered towards a certain area and a certain range of motion. So there's a couple different techniques that I've used in the past. There's FDM is one. They all have 3-letter acronyms, right? Or so it's something like, so if I was going to work on my hand, let's see, right? So we would hold the muscle here and we would move it through a range of motion, right? And as we do that, that muscle is moving underneath my thumb, and my thumb is kind of breaking up some of that scar tissue. Because if you can feel, even on yourself, so if you feel, you always have wrist pain here, I always have back pain here, and you compare the two sides, a lot of times the side that is feeling fine is very smooth. You won't feel any ropes, like ropey tautness. You won't feel any kind of like granular aspects of it, but you go over to the side that's always in pain, and you notice, one, it's tender. Sometimes it can even be red. It feels kind of like gritty. It feels ropey, stuff like that. And doing that manual therapy kind of gets kind of all that junk out of there is what I call it.
So really, you're really just digging in and kind of giving yourself a deep tissue wrist massage while moving your hand. I guess, but the other thing is moving the hand around the process to kind of help I guess
Yeah.
get different parts of it maybe.
Yeah, so you can get different aspects of the muscle. When you're moving it, you get the full range of motion along the muscle belly when you're moving it. And then you're just getting just a nice mobilization in the actual joint that's moving as well.
Well, what's another example of manual therapy? I'm just out of curiosity.
So let's see. You can do it. You honestly do it in like every muscle part. So
Okay.
right now I'm working with Cavs Legion, the NBA 2K team, and they are console players, right? So they have more low back issues rather than wrist and hand. Because when you're playing console, your wrists are pretty neutral. When you're playing, it's not too bad. You'll get some finger fatigue, and you'll get some kind of pain in the fingers. But main thing is low back because the posture is just so bad. And I'm guilty of this when I play console as well. So it's a lot of low back issues, doing a lot of stretching on the rotatories and multifidi. They're just like stabilizers in the low back. And so that's them. And then I'm also working on the Cleveland State League of Legends team, and there's some really bad wrist issues there. So same kind of concept. We're kind of breaking that up, but it's in the wrist this time. And then mobilizing that joint too, and just kind of moving it and getting those nice little pops and everything like that helps relieve like a lot of pressure in there, in those joints.
Yeah, it sounds like almost a theme from, again, just the significant stationary aspect of gaming and figuring out how can we as gamers work in various activities and exercises to help basically undo all of that sedentary process. You know what I mean? And so it sounds like some things the intensity of that sedentary gaming or the emotions is causing all those pains, but these exercises are kind of ways to kind of speed up the healing process by kind of unwinding a lot of that activity. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think, and it's not even a lot of sedentary stuff. A lot of times, as far as the wrist and hand, it's a lot of like repetitive little micro traumas, and if you're not, breaking that up and getting new blood into the area and getting the healing factors into that area, it takes a heck of a lot longer to treat that just through stretching. It really does. And you notice such an increase in healing, speeding up the healing time, but just the instant kind of relief of that joint or those muscles being able to move through a full range of motion and feeling like they're, back to normal basically, rather than what they've been dealing with for, 4 or 5 years of just chronic pain in there.
What? And this may be a little bit loaded, obviously, because you are a chiropractor. But when should someone see a chiropractor versus just do this themselves? And how do they find a chiropractor that can actually help them as a gamer?
Yeah, I think obviously there's a little bias, but I think when you're playing and you're 20, 30 minutes in, you start feeling that pain right away. You need to get checked out. Now, if it's 3-4 hours of straight playing, and you're not feeling much, fine. But if you've been dealing with this for a long period of time, it hasn't gotten better in a year, 2 years, because people are really procrastinating and drag their feet on this as far as pain and going to see someone. If you feel like I have no idea what's going on, this is not getting better, I really enjoy gaming, but I can't even do something I love because there's pain, then go see someone. I think, just get it taken care of. And I'm the same way too. If there's pain, I'm like, it'll go away.
Sure.
And then eventually,
no one wants the inconvenience of stopping and taking the time to do that. But this is the classic thing in life. No matter what it is, like right now, I need to get my tires rotated, but I just don't want to go do it. Right? It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is when those tires either wear out faster and I got to drop another whatever hundreds of bucks on those new tires. Same thing here, but in a bigger way. Like, man, I don't want to go to the chiropractor now, but you realize this small visit to the chiropractor could keep you gaming far longer and prevent you just being out of it for weeks or months down the road.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're, an aspiring esport athlete or a streamer, like this is your livelihood, right? If you can't stream as long or practice as long, why, because you're in pain, then you need to get it taken care of now, because newsflash, healing doesn't get faster as you get older. It's the complete opposite, right? And so, guys, kids that are like 18, 20, 23 that are having pain now, it's not going to get better when you're 25, 27. I could play, 3-4 hours, no problem when I was in college of Halo, no problem. And now I play, 2-3 hours of PUBG on Xbox, and it's just like my neck's killing me. My back's a little sore. I'm just like, this sucks getting old. Yeah.
No, but again, that's why the prevention stuff is so significant. Just don't take those steps now to keep going longer and stronger later on. So as far as treatment goes, you talked about the muscle stripping and some of those exercises on the wrist, and I can use those in different parts of your body. Actually kind of just feels good doing it right there. Yeah. What are some other things that stand out as far as that you do or you advocate for?
One of the things that I absolutely love is kinesiotaping, K-tape, rock tape it's called. You've probably seen it on athletes, a lot of NBA players, a lot of volleyball players, where it's that kind of colored tape that goes on the joint, and it's dependent, like,
and it's always like, and you can buy them in various shapes and stuff. It looks like that. Because I see the athletes, and there's like an X on their calf or their arm,
like a crazy spider web or something.
Yeah.
So the big thing with that stuff is, 1, how you cut it, 2, the tension you put on it, and 3, where you place it. Because I have, once again, I have a lot of patients that say, "Oh, I can just get that at the store and put it on." Yeah, and then they'll come in, they'll have it put on, and there'll be wrinkles in it that that won't be the full range of motion of a joint. So it'll restrict their movement, and then it also has that adhesive on it that will kind of pull at the skin a little bit, and it can irritate the skin. So, putting on yourself or watching YouTube is great, but I think, for the first couple times, go to someone that can do it and do it properly, because it's all about, like I said, tension, how you put it on, and how you cut it to get the maximum effect for that tape. So I love that. I put it on almost every patient. I've put it on some of the PC players that I've worked on, and then as far as the console players, putting it on their low back. It acts like for the low back especially, it acts like a kind of a back brace, but you're still able to move. And when you're able to move, you're still able to get that movement. That movement helps decrease pain, increases the blood flow, and it gets those joints moving, and you feel a heck of a lot better rather than just strapping you into a brace and not moving. And then when you take that off, you feel like you're so much weaker that you need the brace again. And it's kind of a snowball effect with that brace. So I love K-tape. I can't stress the importance of it. Yeah.
So it's like a mini brace. So it kind of gives the support and stuff, but it still allows you to move around, so the blood flow is happening. Interesting. When should someone use that? Is that, I guess, is this because this falls in prevention and treatment, it sounds like.
I use it for everything. I've used it. I play a lot of volleyball. I've used it on my knees when I even felt a little bit of pain. I use it on my back when I felt sore after working out. I've used it on fingers and wrists just to brace. You can use it for literally anything. So I've used it for a lot of like swelling on ankles. It helps kind of pull that swelling out of there by taking the pressure from the skin kind of off those lymph nodes and allowing it to drain a little bit. So you'll have a swollen ankle, and you'll have like 3 things here. And when you take that tape off, it'll have like an indent where it was draining better than the spots that weren't with the tape. Yeah, and you can look on Google as well, like look up bruising in K-tape, and you'll be like, what? Because all the bruising aspects will be taken off, or where that tape was, and where it wasn't, that bruise will still be there.
Why is that? Just because of the blood flow?
Yeah, it just kind of helps decompress that area, and when that area is decompressed, it helps drainage.
Fascinating. Yeah. So it really does fall more in treatment than prevention, because, like you said, once you start feeling pain in an area, K-tape is kind of a special brace of sorts you can utilize to help heal or prevent further pain.
Yeah, and I like it much more than wearing wrist brace and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of that at all, because as soon as you strap on a brace, you limit motion. When you limit motion, same thing with a cast, right? Those muscles get weaker. So when those muscles are weaker, you're going to be more prone to injury. So you're going to wear the brace more. So those muscles are going to get even weaker, and it's just not a good. I can't stand when I see people recommending brace. Unless in like extreme cases, I get it. That's fine. And orthopedists might see some extreme cases, but majority of the time, no. I'm not a fan of those at all. I think taping does a lot better job with that.
Awesome. So muscle stripping and kind of like the targeting massaging you're describing, kinesiotaping, other treatment aspects that stand out that you like to point people to?
Well, just like the actual like chiropractic manipulation, the pops and getting those joints moving. Because you can do all that muscle work, but you need those joints to constantly be moving as well. And when those joints are moving, I don't know if I went over this before, but think about when you're in a movie theater and you don't move your knee. It gets really sore, really achy, really irritated. Once the movie's done, one, you're glad the movie's done. Two, you're happy because you're able to move that knee. And you move that knee, it feels so much better, right? And so it's the same thing with literally any joint in your body. If that joint is moving, it feels better, it's happier, and it in turn decreases the pain in that area. So putting the chiropractic kind of pops in those joints or the manipulations in those helps out tremendously.
So let's do this. Let's do some, I guess, maybe a little bit of demystifying of the chiropractic work in general, because obviously not everyone's been to a chiropractor and maybe have heard one thing or another from their physician or otherwise about how it's good or bad. But I think people who have not been to a chiropractor, you mentioned the popping, that naturally causes people some alarm, like what is going on there and how is that not hurting me or that person? Could you speak to that and how to think about those pops?
Yeah. So whenever I have a new patient and I say, this is what's going to happen, I explain everything. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I use the example of two, actually. So I use when you pop your knuckles, same thing, right? You're taking that joint space and you're opening it up just a little bit. And when you open up a little bit, it's relieving kind of that pressure in there and getting movement there. So it's the same thing when you pop your knuckles, which a lot of people do. And two, joints make kind of like a vacuum effect almost sometimes. It's the same thing if a glass of water is sitting on the table and you put it on there and it kind of gets like a little seal on there, and then you take it off and it makes that kind of sound. Same thing. It's kind of releasing that kind of pressure or that kind of vacuum aspect in that joint. So, I think the biggest thing is people, getting their necks adjusted. And once again, if you YouTube chiropractor, you're going to see some crazy stuff that a vast majority of people don't do. And so I think demystifying that as far as, look, I'm not going to use a towel to adjust your neck or anything crazy like that, like you've probably seen. But the getting those joints moving and getting that manipulation there, I mean, it's instant relief a lot of times.
So the popping, so like if you mix, I grew up hearing even popping your knuckles was bad. I don't know if that was just a wives' tale because my parents didn't want me doing it or not, but you hear things about how that can impact or hurt a joint. Could you speak to, like, is there actually anything going on damaging it? I mean, not damaging, but what should people be aware of there and how to view those things? So
I've read a couple studies, and I don't know, I'm sure someone's going to pull one study from one thing and just roast me on it. But, I've always seen that people that use their hands a lot have a lot of pressure and pain in their hand. Popping those knuckles relieves that. And so I think it's kind of a this and that, not the thing together, making my hands hurt because I pop them a lot. I think I use my hands a lot. My dad was a carpenter. And so, he every once in a while he would pop his knuckles because obviously, you get a lot of pressure in there. And I grew up doing it my whole life, and even into college, and swinging a hammer and picking up stuff and throwing shingles and stuff like that. Your hands get sore, right? And popping that relieves that pressure in there. So I don't think, now granted, if you're popping them constantly, because,
sure.
I'm not going to recommend that whatsoever.
Sure.
But popping them, 2-3 times a day, even 4 or 5 times a day, it's not going to do anything. Yeah.
And what exactly is creating that sound? Sorry, I'll move on after this, but what is it? Is it what's making that sound actually happen?
So it's kind of like that glass on the table thing where it's kind of like a vacuum within that joint. Okay. And a lot of times it happens when you're doing the chiropractic manipulation, the joint will you'll go to this, you'll feel it kind of, the joint lock out is the term that we used in college and stuff. And basically it's that joint limitation. And then you just make a quick little movement and it's small and it just goes, and it's just that kind of pressure getting released in there.
Interesting. Great. Well, hey, this has been fantastic, Drew. I mean, is there any other parting thoughts or any other like treatment or prevention tips or techniques that you want to throw out that we haven't discussed yet? No pressure, but I want to make sure we get a chance for you to bring everything out while we're here.
No, I think the biggest thing is the education aspect and the ergonomic aspect, and then you couple that with the treatment. Like I said, you can do treatment all you want, but if they go back to the same terrible setup with poor education on how to set it up and how to sit and utilize the tools they have, then you're just, you're paddling upstream. You're not doing anything. And so, coupling education ergonomics with the treatment is a far better approach to just education only or treatment only. They definitely have to be coupled.
Awesome. Well, hey, Drew, thanks so much for what you're doing. Well, thanks for being with us on the summit, and thanks for all you're doing to help gamers everywhere just be healthier and play better.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it. I had a good time. It was fun.